So this workshop is becoming the media and getting creative. So the premise is that I'm sure you all read the description, so I'm not just going to reread it. But the reason that we wanted to do this workshop is because most of the corporate major media outlets that we get our news from are beholden to the industries that have a vested, or well, they're beholden to industries that exploit animals and environmental stuff. So you get news that likes to think that it's not biased, but the advertiser, if you watch which ads come on, if you're watching the news, and I hope you don't, but if you are watching the news, you'll see like who the advertisers are, and it's dairy and it's meat and it's SUVs and it's all of this stuff. And if you read a lot of lefty media as well, it's the exact same advertisers, it's just organic dairy and organic meat in lefty magazines. So I think that there's some integrity in some of those outlets, but the bottom line is they're never going to really challenge the industries that write their paychecks and keep their fancy offices in place. So at this time in history, with the internet and several other things, we all have the ability to create media instead of just ingest it and just be influenced by it. We can create media and actually tell the truth, because we don't accept ads from dairy companies. I assume none of you are getting paid by dairy companies. So you are? That's not going to work out. Well, good luck. Good luck with the whole project there. So, wow. So we're going to talk about how desktop publishing tools, a little bit less, but the democratization of publishing tools is a real opportunity for us all to create media instead of just take it in. This is important partially because of the beholdenness to animal exploitation industries, but also because there's a shrinking number of people that actually own most of the media that we take in. I think there's 5 major corporations that own something like 90% of all newspapers, radio, TV stations, all that stuff. There's only a handful of people that own it. A lot of it's Rupert Murdoch, and a lot of it are people that have political interests that probably most of you who are here don't agree with in the first place. So creating new media in order to challenge all of that and actually give progressive causes and animal rights and environmental stuff a fair shake is what we're going to talk about today. These are my lovely co-presenters. And Jessie is going to talk first. She's going to introduce herself and then talk a little bit about print media. And then Glenn's going to talk about the internet.
Hi, I'm Jessie. I don't do public speaking, so I'm super freaked out. So if I don't make any sense, grab me afterwards, and we can do one-on-one. I'll do much better, I promise. I'm also trying not to stare at the paper and read too much. But yeah. I got involved with becoming the media when I was 21. I started a weekly paper in San Diego that lasted for about a year and a half. After that, I have been freelancing and freelance writing and freelance editing. I worked for Herbivore for a while. Right now I work for Microcosm Publishing. I'm in charge of the Portland office. I do most of I do all of our media relations work, and then editing and giving books to Food Fight and that type of stuff. It's tough to decide where to begin or what to include in 10 minutes on print media because it's a very extensive topic. But I'm going to go into books, zines, and magazines. I think what I'll start off with, hold that. I think a really good starting off point if you want to get involved with the media is to just go into like participatory media, like indie media, and just start writing and publishing that way to get a feel, like you can develop your writing voice that way, get an idea about stories and an editorial process just to get started, because there's people there that are willing to work with you and help you, and it's just a really good jumping off point. Besides that, I don't think that there's not a lot that we can do working with mainstream media, and I'm kind of all about disengaging from them completely, and doing things as much DIY as possible, because of how the mainstream publishing world works. It's really difficult to break into like that establishment, and so it's much easier to just screw it and go find your own way. So, but one of the things I'll talk about really quick how mainstream book publishing and mainstream magazine publishing works and why it doesn't really work to our benefit. The way books are distributed generally is that a publisher will send copies to a wholesaler or a distributor who sends them to retail outlets. And the bookstores buy books on consignment and can return them to the publisher, no questions asked. So what happens is, especially with chains, is that publishers have to overprint their books. Then the chains buy over stock and over-order the books, so that which drives up cost, because if you want to compete, you have to be able to provide these books to these people. But your books are going to get returned to you, and this is just how publishing works. Like, you're just going to assume I'm going to make 100,000 copies of this book, and I'm going to send them out to Borders and Barnes and Nobles and everybody all over the country or all over the world, and then they're all going to come back to me, or they're going to go to the garbage or whatever. Magazines work the same way. You're going to go put your magazines on the newsstand, and the majority of your magazines are going to go into the garbage. And you have to supply a certain amount of magazines, but they're not going to be sold, and they're just going to become trash. So it's like there's no point in trying to work with that system, because it's ridiculous, the amount of waste that goes into that. Your money, your time, like the paper, it doesn't make any sense. So, I'm sorry. I don't know how many of you have heard of, like, it's the Independent Publishing Association, right? Is the IPA that went down. Recently, the magazine industry, independent publishing, has been in really bad shape, because if you make a magazine, you can't just go over to Borders and say, I want you to put this magazine on your shelf. It doesn't work that way. You have to go through a distributor. So there was a big distributor that had Clamor, that had Punk Planet, Herbivore, and they went down. And so then all of these magazines didn't have any way of getting their magazines onto the shelf anymore. So, and there still isn't a distributor, is that correct?
Not a good one.
Yeah, there's not really an option. So, dealing with these issues, it seems to me that like there's not really a reason for us to go through these channels at all. Because if you make a magazine like Herbivore and you put it gets onto the shelves at Barnes & Noble, it's in this giant sea of crap. Anyway, so the chance of somebody picking up this magazine off the newsstand is unlikely. And even for mainstream magazines, single sale copies of magazines have been like steadily declining like since 2000. So what you really need to do if you're making a zine or you have a magazine or you're publishing a book is try to get your product directly into the hands of the readers with as few interruptions between you and them as possible. So one way to do that, I think the best way to do that is to just, for like table events with your product, and like at shows or events like this, just trying to get it, here is my book, here's my $5 or whatever. It cuts down the cost significantly if you're not dealing with distributors or book agents or wholesalers. It's also getting the books and magazines into less traditional places. Since it's so difficult to get into bookstores, it makes more sense to get your book into places like Food Fight or food co-ops or like non-book retail outlets where it's going to your publication is going to stand out more than it would at a chain store. Let me shuffle around for a second. A big thing with magazines, I think one of the problems that we run into is that with traditional magazines, your funding comes from subscriptions and advertising. But the advertising is really, really difficult to get. If you make a vegan product, you probably don't have a lot of money to throw advertising into a lot of different publications. And so you're going to find like the one, you're going to use Veg Times or something like that, and you're not going to get a lot of people on like the bottom rung are not going to get a lot of advertising. I mean, you might get some, but it's not. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, and just use those two traditional forms of funding. I think we have to look at what Clamor did with they had an info shop and were able to sell and like basically distribute products to their readers, and they were able to get some income from that. I think doing that type of thing where you're not just a publication, but you're also an info shop. You also sell T-shirts. Those type of things are really needed to support the product, because what you're going against is people that their bottom line is making money. And if what our bottom line is to getting our message out, then we can't work on relying on these advertisers and subscribers to support the work. See, this is what I was talking about. It's been 10 minutes. I have to stop, and I know I didn't say anything very coherent, but grab me afterwards. I promise it'll make more sense.
I'm Glenn. I work with an organization in Vancouver called Liberation BC. For my day job, I'm a graphic designer and I build websites for nonprofits. And I've found that people who know how to build websites, as their knowledge of websites goes up, their ability to communicate with people goes down. So hopefully I don't know websites very well. So I'm going to talk about the internet and how we can create media or new media options or media for that online opportunity. Because there's a million opportunities for online media. The most obvious, and probably the one that some of you do, is blogging. Many of you have a blog? Hey, awesome. How hard is it to write constantly?
Impossible.
Do any of you blog daily? Cool. Do any of you blog weekly? Nice, that's good. If you ever read Seth Godin, he blogs every single day of the year, all the time. And he's an amazing marketing guy, and you all should read his books. But it's really, really hard, and that's one of the huge challenges of creating media, is actually creating the content, which is the most important part of whatever we do, is creating the actual content that we do. So blogging is really easy. It's free to set up a blog. Anyone can set up a blog anytime in about 4 minutes, probably. 20 minutes if you want to make it really complicated. I have lots of other pages. Has anyone here tried video blogging? Awesome. Video blogging now is really cheap. And it's kind of cool because you have that additional outlet of YouTube. You can include footage in your video. It's a little tougher to get people to sit through it and watch it.
I don't know if this is where you're going, but I do social media work, and social media blogging is very cool.
Oh, yeah.
Just incorporating different things, like you can do Flickr photo streams and video blogging and tags to your different online, like Twitter and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, integrating all of those sort of media streams is a great thing to do, and they can even feed into your Facebook account, and you can use them in MySpace. LinkedIn probably has things where you can use them and you can pump content all over the place. The great thing about that, which I was going to mention a little later, is that the more places this content shows up, the likelier it is that it'll hit in Google results, which is really the key thing for getting information out on the internet, is if someone searches for foie gras, do you come up in the top 10 or the top 20? And if you can hit in that top 10, someone might look at your information instead of Hudson Valley's information, which is great. And if you've got a WordPress blog and you're showing up in WordPress's tags as well, you're twice as likely to hit that Google search, which is really pretty cool. You can also blog just using Flickr. You can photo blog, have a photo stream, and that's awesome. So blogs are really the simple and easy thing to do that almost every one of us could do, unless we don't know how to type or on a computer. And really, a lot of the blogging is just getting content up. The real point of creating media is to get the information out there. And information that's out there on the internet is always out there on the internet. And so just keep putting that content out there, and it's almost like flooding the internet with our point of view, so we can overcome this enormous industry that puts out all this other information. An idea might be to start an online journal. There are some great online journals, not animal-oriented. One that's Canadian that I'm familiar with is called the Tyee, which is an indie online newspaper, basically. It's all online, and they actually take advertising, you get funding and stuff. But the software it's built on is free, and so anyone could really set one of these things up for very little cost other than web hosting. So for $125 a year for a really good web host, you could have a nice online news site. Get people to submit stories to you, post articles yourself. Could really be cool. It just takes time and effort to create the content. Just the tools are really there. It's the THETYEE, and it has their logo as a picture of a fish. Sorry, it's terrible. But they're still, what they do is really cool. And if any of you have heard of Now Public, do you know Now Public? It's a user-submitted online news publication where people can submit stories. You just have an account. It's kind of like Wikipedia, where you can just post your stories. They get voted up or down. People can edit them, fix them, ask for citations. You get public photos that get included. People get photos from Flickr and put them into their Now Public stories. And that's an interesting way to experiment with what content can get out there, and kind of merging the animal rights media with a more mainstream kind of democratic system. One thing, I agree that separating ourselves from traditional media is a good thing to do, but I also think that, or I know that offline media, print media, publicity kind of efforts can drive huge amounts of traffic to online areas. So if we have a website, an online journal, blog, and we can get publicity offline, if we can get mentioned on an article, if we can get an interview in a local paper, your traffic's going to spike on your own site. So that's something to think about. If your local animal rights group does an investigation, you blog about it, put out a press release about your blog post, about the story that you covered to the newspaper. Maybe they'll mention you if they do an article about that investigation. And then not only will the animal rights group get a benefit, your blog will get a benefit. You get double the exposure. Of course, we all know about Dig and all of those things, right? No. No one knows about Dig? Dig is social bookmarking, essentially. People say, I really liked this story on the internet. They dig it. They have a Dig account, and they just dig it. When stories hit the front page of Dig, they get so much traffic that sometimes it takes down the server that the site is on. So it has huge amounts of traffic go through Dig. People like your story, they they dig it, and it rises in the dig rankings, and more people look at it. These things are becoming more and more popular on the internet, especially among younger people, which is a great audience to hit. There's other ones called Reddit. Newsvine is a good one. Delicious is a social bookmarking site. You can actually post your own stories to Delicious and use that RSS feed. Does everyone know what an RSS feed is? Mm-hmm. It's a way that you can syndicate your content. Say if you have a blog, you're posting once a week, your blog software probably generates automatically what's called an RSS feed. It's a really simple syndication. And what that means is that someone can click on this RSS icon and subscribe to your blog, and then every time you post, it just pushes the content out. No one has to remember to come to your site. All they do is they open up their RSS reader, and they just see that you have a new post, you have a new post. And other sites will go through the internet and subscribe to these RSS feeds, and your content will start showing up across the internet without you even having to do anything. So make sure that whatever you're blogging with has this functionality available. Lots of blogging software, I know WordPress especially has the ability to automatically put in links for people to post on Facebook, post to Delicious, post to Dig, so that your readers can just come to your blog, read it, say, wow, that was really cool. I'm going to post this to my Facebook profile. And all of a sudden it's pushed out to all of their friends on Facebook. Because that's what happens when something goes onto Facebook, it just gets pushed out. That's 10 minutes. My last thing is be imaginative. The internet is new, everything's always changing. You can come up with an idea, there's probably someone who can build it. And remember to ask, don't be afraid to ask people with technical knowledge to volunteer. Half the internet has been written by volunteers anyway, and techie people love to volunteer their time to do cool techie things. And if you can come up with something cool, they will probably enjoy doing it, no matter what it's for. Are we going to take questions now?
I'm going to do a quick little bit more, and then we'll do questions. So I'm going to add two quick things to each of your things. One of the things about print media, I had a magazine called Herbivore, and we used mainstream distribution models for the magazine. And so there's a lot of distrust of established media at this point, which is a really good reason to not use established channels if you decide to do a print publication. It's very resource intensive, like Jesse said. But a lot of people see a magazine and they think it's this disposable thing that costs this much money. It's going to have these kind of articles. There's going to be something on the cover that says 25 most somethings. Like there's all these tricks that newsstand magazines use to get you to pick them up. You put food, pretty girl, or a car on the cover every time. Like our distributor would talk to us about our covers, and some of them were a little less clear about what they were. And they would suggest that we put things that they know sell on the cover. This is the kind of, like they're like, don't you have like a pretty girl you can put on the cover, or food, or something like that? We were never really interested in doing that. So,
Hey!
oh yeah, you were on the cover. What I meant to say was, so,
You prefer average-looking girls.
yeah, it's much more realistic. So just with all of these things in place that drive newsstand sales, what ends up getting there, what ends up succeeding, isn't necessarily very good information in the first place. So finding independent and more creative ways to get your print publications out there, I think, is a really great way to go at this point. And to add one quick thing to the internet conversation, all of these tools are free. Everyone has access to them, which is why there's a lot of really shitty stuff on the internet, because everybody can have a blog and not everybody should have a blog. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to not, I don't want you to take these tools that we're talking about and go make crap. So I'm going to talk as best I can about how not to make crappy media. And I hope you assume that I didn't make any. I did, but not always. And I think I learned a few things. So if you utilize any of these tools, either print or online, what is really, really important is you find your voice. And there's two ways you can go about doing this. One is that you can, this is what we did. You can just sort of strike out there and say whatever you're going to say, however you're going to say it, and just assume that your audience will find you, or you will find them, based on you just doing exactly what you wanted to do. That's kind of how we went about it. And some people don't like swear words, some people don't think certain things that I think are funny, but you will find an audience if you go forth bravely and have a strong voice. The other thing you can attempt to do is really think about, if you're going to try to be sort of everything to everybody, you're going to want to tone things back. We had a lot of people that read our magazine that didn't appreciate some of the stuff that we talked about or that we covered. I'll get it. You are a real troublemaker. Everything that's gone wrong has been you.
It's a long story. Go on.
No, go get it. Go ahead and get it. No, go ahead.
Hello?
So, we didn't practice this. So the other thing you can do is attempt to sort of be a lot more accessible. And to do that, you're going to have to sort of maybe tone down personality or tone down attitude or humor or whatever, if you choose to do that. If you want it to be sort of the USA Today of veganism. And we need one. There's a door you could...
I figure out how to mute it, but I need to see
You
what's
just
behind
take it and you would need to, what I'm getting at is you really need to think about who your audience is if you're going to try to reach an existing audience. What does that audience respond to? What does that audience read? What kind of tone does that audience respond to? So a few questions that you might want to ask yourself when you're coming up with what you're going to use these tools for is ask yourself what you respond to. Like, what kind of media do you actually appreciate?
Shut it off.
Oh, good. Like, what voices did you respond to? Like, what do you read constantly, and what is it about those things and about that writing that keep you reading it? Another thing that I think is really important, and I think can be really daunting for people in a number of different levels of activism, you don't need to be an expert in anything to start creating media. It's really daunting to think you have to know everything and you have to be able to just spew facts. I cannot remember hardly anything for some reason. It's just the way my brain happens to be working these days. But I don't need to remember facts, because ultimately, if you're writing pro-animal or pro-environment or pro-whatever literature, people are going to be coming at you somewhat skeptically in the first place. You should encourage them to look up your information. One thing that we have is that we have all of the facts and the truth on our side. Don't expect them to trust you. Just make sure that you can point them in the direction of where you got your information from, but you don't have to spew facts at people. A lot of people won't respond to that in the first place. If you speak really truthfully and from your heart, people respond to that much more than they do long lists of facts and figures in the first place. And then when you get to the facts and figures, you should just be able to point them to where you got that information from. But don't let the idea that you're going to be challenged and someone's going to say, how many land animals die each year, and you're not going to know the number. I think it's 8 billion. 9 billion. You don't have to know that it's 9 billion. You can just... I'm
I
sorry?
just learned that
I thought it
this
was
morning.
27 billion.
See?
My workshop.
I just say it's a shitload, and leave it at that.
Yeah, like you
It's
don't
more
really...
than that.
Yeah, it's a fuck ton. It's metrically bigger than a shitload.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
What happened?
But you would be able to just say, why don't you go look it up if you don't believe what I'm saying? Go look it up and come back and tell me how much it is. I know that it's a massive amount, but you don't really need to do that. You can speak from your heart, and you can talk about your experience, and you can talk about where you're from, and that should do it. That's something that I respond to a lot more than just straight facts and figures.
And actually, all it has to do is be one.
Yeah.
The slide.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think if you can get people to understand that you have some passion about what you're talking about, as opposed to just coldly reeling off information, and develop a strong voice that way. That's a good way to go about doing that. So you don't have to be an expert. You really need to think about who your audience is. Don't try to pretend that you're like a young hipster person and you're trying to get, don't fake it. Like, people know, kids know that when you're faking it. Believe me, there's so many times where I've read stuff that is trying to appeal to a youth demographic who the last I heard was the largest group of people that are going vegetarian is like teenage girls. If you were trying to talk to that demographic, don't be an old man trying to sound like a teenage girl. Like, find a community of people and have them write with you or for you or work with them on something, but don't try to fake the lingo because it's not going to look good and no one's going to believe you. So
And you might have police investigating you.
they might be wondering why you've got these identities on teen girl websites. Yeah, that's not what you want to have happen. Believe me. This just took a weird turn. But people respond to authenticity, and if you were challenging the status quo, which you will be, there's going to be a lot of skepticism coming your way. The very least that you can do is be authentic, and people will at the very least respond to that, and they'll take you a lot more seriously on that level from the get-go. So I think that's probably enough of me talking. So we're going to take some questions, and we're hoping, since you're at this workshop, you have some interest in doing some sort of project, and maybe you'll have some questions now.
I was just wondering if you, or I guess anyone else in the room for that matter, has suggestions about how to try to merge some of the classic marketing strategies with the fact that, as you say, so many magazines are just crap that no one takes them seriously. Because there's something to be said for the fact that, like, pretty girls and food on the cover of magazines work. Yeah, most of the magazines that use those tricks suck, but if your magazine is good, it still works. And, like, you know, it works for reasons. Who the hell doesn't like pretty girls or good food? So, like, I don't think it's the proper method to just abandon those things, because people have spent years and years and years and years and years figuring out the kinds of things that do draw attention. The key is to be able to use those things and still separate yourself from all the crap that's out there, I think.
Maybe so.
I don't completely agree with that. I think
Celibate aesthetics.
sometimes yes, but as a girl, pretty or not, I not necessarily like the idea of propping up that mechanism.
No, I mean, I use pretty girls in food because it's like the
No, I know,
common example.
But I think it's a good
But
example.
what I mean is that, like, someone with a PhD in marketing is going to be a lot more effective at selling a vegan message through magazines than I am, specifically because they have that training in classic marketing. The whole point is that the classic training in marketing gives you advantages because it teaches you what does get across.
Well, it depends on, this is like depending on who your audience is.
Right, can I just say, one thing, I work for the PR firm that represents Microsoft, and Microsoft is freaking out right now because Google doesn't do classic marketing, they do viral marketing, and they're on the web and they're doing it that way. So you have a very good point, and for some of the demographic, that's totally gonna work. But for other people, social media and what 15-year-old girls are doing with their texting, and because email's dead to kids, they don't use it. They use Facebook and stuff. That is what I think you can really hit people with. So I think it's a nice balance, I really do.
I think another thing is that, and I understand what you're saying, and I think that can be very effective in a lot of ways. I think PETA has done some things that I can't get behind.
Well, I mean, that's good. PETA uses half-naked pictures of like famous celebrities, men and women, on their covers because it draws attention.
But see, that's the problem we have, that's exploitation, and I'm against exploitation.
To stop exploiting animals doesn't make sense to me, but I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. We're helping run a booth at Warped Tour this year, and what we were talking about was that, like, the pretty girls, you get lots of teenage boys coming to the booth. That's true, but is having a pretty face really going to change someone's beliefs? Like, I've had lots of pretty girls talk to me and be like, "Oh yeah, you should go vegan," and before I was like,
It's about starting the conversation.
But what I'm saying is that if they don't have, I think the message is so much more important. It's good to have, people that look friendly or pretty girls and nice food or whatever the example that you want to use is. But I think that when you have someone that might have those qualities that attract people initially, and then they get there and don't really have any information to receive, like that's where I found the problem. So
yeah, well, there's two things that I would say. One is that pandering to like the lowest common denominator by using those marketing techniques assumes that the audience doesn't have any other interests, and that's all that we will respond to. And
that's what mainstream media does.
Right, and there's a huge problem with that entire model. You could use those tools, but I think where certain groups like PETA fall short is that it's just a flashy thing that gets attention, but it's not quality traffic. Like, it's not the people that are looking at that.
Tips aren't quality.
I think I'm on the phone still. I've got a good comeback. Do you know what the difference between a speaker and an asshole is? 30 feet. I just heard that the other day. So,
3 feet.
30 feet.
I mean,
30 feet.
in the
I heard
end, it's not that I don't like viral marketing. I think both of them are necessary in the end. The point is that in reaching out to and using viral marketing to reach out to teenage girls and whomever else, whoever the primary audiences are, you make progress. But at some point, if we are ever going to, what we all want is for people to stop eating meat and stop fucking abusing animals. At some point, if we're going to accomplish that on a global scale, it has to go mainstream. It has to. There has to be a full dialogue shift in this country. And in order to do that, you're going to have to get the attention of a fuckload of people.
But you don't want to, but by doing something like the pretty ladies on the magazine covers and such, you're basically compromising other messages and other things, because it's not all about animals. Wait, hold on, you've been talking a lot, I haven't yet. So basically, there's more than animals. I mean, there's fat phobia, there's sexism, there's racism, and so forth. If you're just looking at the animal issue, then, you know, you can go crazy. But there's so much more to that all of those are connected and it affects one another. And by putting the nice, pretty lady on the cover, you're basically insulting groups within the movement, and there's issues there.
Let's forget about the pretty girl, because it's a common example, so I use it, but I realize that brings up all kinds of other issues. What's the problem? Because it's the same general method. What's the problem with taking a famous celebrity that you know people will respond to? We were just talking about this in the other room. When Victoria Beckham, when Posh Spice picked up Skinny Bitch, millions of women around the world started reading Skinny Bitch because they, holy shit, Posh Spice is reading Skinny Bitch. What's the problem with using that draw? Like, whether it be...
It's about target audience. Are you trying to sell veganism or some new age guru?
Dude, I don't care how I sell veganism as long as I sell veganism.
Because I think he's right, I do, because Oprah, that 21 days has reached more people than probably 10 years of us.
But I think the difference with Oprah is that she's not exploiting anyone.
No.
That's the thing that I have.
I totally agree with
I said it before and I'll say it again. Exploiting women to stop exploiting animals, in my opinion, isn't right.
Okay, but it's not just about pretty girls. It's about all kinds of marketing techniques.
And when it's people like Oprah that no one's being hurt and no one's being exploited by, it's fine. I'm all
Use a
for it.
sports
But,
celebrity.
you know,
Tailgate
I want to
parties
talk
is
to
a better
Rachel on
example.
that.
I kind of want to get back to get away from the pretty girl thing. I think what you're trying to say is, and I agree with this, is we need these marketing techniques.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that may include pictures, like positive imagery and things like that. I mean, it's true that pretty food and girls or whatever may get attention, but it's not about that. It's not, we need to focus on marketing techniques in general, whether that's the viral marketing, some stuff like that. I mean, we have to become more mainstream, but that doesn't necessarily mean making girls. It's just we have to recognize that in order to appeal to people, we do have to make veganism more accessible, and that does mean targeting the mainstream.
Exactly.
And you can use lots of different methods for that. Oprah is a very good example. And like it or not, I mean, people seeing Posh Spice, that seems, well, there's this, girl out there with Skinny Bitch. Half the people don't even know who she is. They just know, oh, she's some famous person that I keep seeing pictures of. She's reading Skinny Bitch. And so to them, that seems more normal and more accessible. And so then you have a lot of people out there reading the magazine. I don't think a picture of Posh, whatever the hell, is pandering to anybody. It's just a person that people recognize with a book.
Yeah. So, Glenn, what's next?
In this discussion of marketing, it's important to note that mainstream marketing is not working for magazines in general right now. Sales are declining, as Jesse said, for magazines across the board. So even Cosmo, they're not doing well with the mainstream marketing techniques that they're using. So copying those techniques, using those techniques may not be the best thing at all.
But some kind of marketing.
Oh, absolutely. But
It's about identifying what tools we have and using the best ones.
which really is mostly about identifying the audience and deciding what's going to reach them the best. If you want to reach vegans, who needs someone pretty on the cover? Speak to vegans. If you want to reach teenage girls, use something that's going to speak to teenage girls. But be aware that single copy magazine sales are declining, and that print magazine may not be the best option for reaching mainstream audience at all. It might be really the wrong choice, and we might be dumping money down the toilet.
When you say single copy, you mean off the stand, or does that
Obviously.
include subscriptions?
No, it doesn't
Newsstand.
include, that's newsstand.
What's happening with subscriptions? Does anybody know?
I think it's pretty level. Like I think book sales and magazine sales are not declining, even though.
So
Bec-
overall,
bec-
people
what's
are
that?
still
Is it
buying
newspaper?
magazines.
Yeah, newspaper is declining, and single, just newsstand copies are declining, but subscriptions are pretty level right now.
And I would guess that probably paper costs will somewhat rise, and likely we won't want to be using anything that's non-recycled paper. So a vegan magazine is going to cost more
Yeah.
to produce as well. Yeah, you've had a question for like 15 minutes.
It's cool, because my question is, like, I don't know how many of you it helps. I feel like I might live in a cave for asking this, but like, I've always been interested in blogging. I always wanted to get a start. Tried Googling blogging and like getting a start in it, and was inundated with like just a handful of crap, and I'm not any farther in the process. Do you, with all your like net savviness, have any recommendations
Yes.
for anything?
Come to the next talk, the internet activism talk.
All right.
Because I'm going to talk for 10 or 15 minutes about setting up a WordPress site.
I set up 2 last week and they took me like 30 seconds each.
Totally, absolutely.
30 seconds?
I
And
could,
I had a hit from Google on one of the AI and rights things. Seriously, it's very
I could likely do it live, which I'm not going to do, but it really seriously can take you 15-20 minutes to set up, including buying your domain name and everything. But my next...
You don't have to do that with WordPress, it's free.
No, you don't, but if you wanted to have a website with your own domain name.
Yeah, but for him, he could seriously.
Yeah.
WordPress, good start for blogging. Yes.
Totally
Yeah,
good
absolutely,
WordPress.
fantastic.
Sweet.
Yeah. do it.
Okay.
Fantastic.
I got an answer.
1 second. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm wondering a little bit about zines, and I'm just wondering, Jesse, can you just talk a little bit about what you think the distribution
What's
is
that?
of, like, how broad of a distribution zines get through, say, Microcosm, and what are, like,
Before I started working at Microcosm, I had no idea how well zines sell. It just seemed kind of like throwaway media to me. But I mean, that style of media has been used. I mean, Thomas Paine's Common Sense. I mean, you're saying zine, and it makes it, when you say zine to people, it makes it seem kind of like 14-year-old girls cutting up magazines or something like that. If you say political pamphlet, it somehow seems like more legitimate thing.
Chandra, let me
But
be
there's-
sitting next to a tree with a flute playing behind
I was
me.
doing I was doing some figures last night, and I was saying that if you write a magazine article and sell it to a glossy magazine, say they give you $150, if you can find somebody that'll do that. If you took that same exact amount of content and made a zine with it on your own, you could make at least that much money or more, if just from a profit standpoint. But also, like, the market is huge. I mean, we're selling zines all over the world constantly. Like, I mean, we can almost not keep up with the demand for it. And so there's definitely a market for it.
and if someone has a zine and wants to distribute it, do they just call up Microcosm?
Oh yeah, I mean, and there's tons of other distributors. I mean, basically you just pop in, a mailer and send it to whatever distributor, and it's a lot easier than, getting a book distributed. I mean, it's pretty good.
And then who publishes them?
I mean, if you want to talk about this later too,
Oh,
they're
you're
cutting
doing
us off.
another.
No, I mean, I'm going to be hanging out. I have nothing to do all day. If people want to ask me questions, I'll be out there.
So we're out of time. I hope that everybody that's interested in internet stuff goes to Glenn's next talk. I want you all to smile for me.